Hello, mortgage fans. So welcome back to our market update. This week I've labelled it EuroTrash. Don't worry, I'm not going to do a sort of reboot of the sort of titillating 90s show with, I think it was Jean-Paul Gaultier and Antoine Decourt, if I remember correctly, which plays about every racial stereotype at the time. So that's probably a programme long destined for the bin and probably where it deserves to live. But the reason why I picked this topic out was I was actually quoted in a Financial Times article last week, which I was very proud to be asked about. And what it touched on was the difficulties of someone in Europe getting a mortgage in the UK and then vice versa. So what I want to do is just spend a little bit more time explaining that in a bit more detail, what the rules actually are, and what we've got is some frequently asked questions from our clients as well. So if you are in the area of either not being in the UK originally, or even if you are a UK citizen and you're planning to spend time abroad, probably worth tuning in for this one, because this will explain how some of the rules work, specifically post-Brexit, because there are quite a lot of changes. Also, for the eagle-eyed of you, you might notice a few cuts and bruises around my forehead and ears. Don't worry, I've not taken to the street, nothing crazy. Played a Vets game of rugby on Friday. You always know it's one of those things when your wife looks at you just sort of shaking her head like, what are you doing? And it's today I'm sort of very much reminded that my body is 41, not 21. And yeah, it's probably got a bit of way to get a bit of fitness in, but very glad that I came through that in one piece. And anyone in their 40s trying to keep it real, good luck to you. But anyway, back into what I want to talk about today. So as I mentioned, this is really specifically really around sort of European movements, because any movement outside of the euro, so if in America, South America, or really anywhere in the world other than Europe, the rules are all still the same. I'll touch on that perhaps another time, but actually what you're finding previously, obviously you had free movement of people around Europe, that's now changed. So I just want to sort of focus on how that affects both UK and non-UK nationals. Couple of things I just want to touch on before I dive into the most commonly asked questions are, one thing which is a really weird rule that surfaced post-Brexit is where you get advice. So if you are looking to get a residential loan, so a property for you to move into, it is absolutely essential you get advice in the UK. Now, this is a specific regulatory change post-Brexit, which I won't go on about in any great depth, but that's the point I want to drum home. And also something we'll touch on is what the difference between regulated and non-regulated loans is. A really, really key difference. But where you get advice is essential. Now, speaking to a broker is going to be massively beneficial because, one, we can do video meetings, we can arrange things, we can tee things up, we can make your life a lot easier. But that's one thing we really, really need to be careful of. This is actually the whole thing around the FT and sort of why it came up, because they heard about this. I was helping some clients at the time and we explained how we got around it to the mortgage offer actually being issued. So we did our job, but it was a really bumpy ride. Purpose of loan, as I touched on, is a huge factor. So if you're looking to move into the property, that's what we call a residential mortgage, or sometimes called a regulated loan. Now, that's all regulated by the FCA, and lots of strict rules sit around that in terms of residency, affordability. And so that's primarily what this is driven at. So if you're looking at moving into a property, or you're a UK national outside of the UK looking to buy a property to move into, this is probably where the changes lie. If it's an investment property, less so. If I'm interested, so if it's a buy-to-let you're looking at getting, the rules are pretty much as they were before. Certainly a lot more relaxed. There's certain things you need to think about, but it's probably more akin to, if you're a non-UK national anywhere, really. No specific requirements for the majority of banks. Some other things I'll talk on a technical point later as well. The reason being is that buy-to-let mortgages aren't regulated by the FCA. They're actually regulated by the Prudential Financial Authority, if you're interested. But so different rules apply to that, which is sort of relevant in this context, because even if you're getting a rental property or plan to move into it later, that's regulated, or if you've lived in a property and renting it out, it's still regulated. So I don't want to go on that huge detail now, but it can trip you up because it's not quite straightforward, and hence why I'm taking the time to put this together. So there's sort of the two things I really want to sort of drum in. So where you get advice is the absolute key point, and then what type of loan are you getting is the second one. So if you're really clear about what you're doing, that's probably a good time to come talk to a broker, and we can certainly hold your hand through that. Now, as a result of this, and we've been helping clients sort of internationally for years, really, we've got quite a good sort of bank of clients and the questions they've asked us. So these are sort of the four key considerations that are, or certainly questions that come back to us from clients. Now, the first is, if you're an EU citizen, can you get a mortgage in the UK? So I touched on that. Yes, you can. Couple of things you want to think within this are what level of deposit you have. So some banks have much stricter requirements. If you're a non-UK national, they can insist of anywhere between 25 to 50% deposit, some more, some less. Some banks don't entertain it whatsoever. So you go to one bank and they say, no, we don't do that. And another bank will say yes. So the level of deposit is really, really, really important. But primarily the banks that do accept this, normally around about a 25% deposit, gets you in the ballpark. But as I say, some banks will accept less, specifically for high net worth clients as well. So if your income is over £300,000 or you have more than £3 million worth of net assets, you're deemed a high net worth individual, and private banks will sort of push the boat out for this. So maybe less stringent rules, because again, they're more in keeping with this world. Two other things to think about is how long you've been in the UK for. So some banks will say, right, you need a certain level of deposit and you need to be in the UK a certain amount of time, or how long is left on your visa. So it tends to be around about either 2 years in the UK or 2 years left on your visa. That's sort of the rules that sort of banks want to see if they'll lend in this area. It may well be that post-Brexit, you have settled status in the UK. That's fine. That's really easy. What we tend to find is there's sort of a code that you can get through the YouGov website, which we can share with lenders, and they prove it that way. So it's actually nice and easy. That's working quite well. Last point on this one is really the type of visa that you have as well. Now, primarily, as long as you have a valid visa, you should be okay. The one that banks don't like will be a student visa, because you're not allowed to work. So if you've let your student visa extend and had a job, that happens, that's the real world, you will need to address that before you get a mortgage. Whether it's sort of tier 1, ancestral, marriage visas, there's a whole bunch of visas that are out there. Doesn't really matter, like I say, as long as it's a valid visa, ideally with 2 years or more left on the end of the visa, or you've been here more than 2 years, you should generally be fine. Now, the second question is, can I get a UK mortgage if I am paid in euros? Yes, you can. And this comes up way more than you think. Obviously, a lot of European companies have base here. The one that always jumps out to mind, actually, because I dealt with this recently, is the European Development Bank. And there are a few government agencies or European agencies where they pay their staff in euros as well. So again, banks sort of quite happy to accept that, but it's very much like the visa answer. So not all banks accept it. And then of the banks that do, they often apply what's called a haircut. So they might knock anywhere between 10 to 20% off what you actually earn, because that accounts for currency fluctuations. And that is also the main reason why banks don't like to play in this area, because €100,000 income may change in real terms, whereas actually 100,000 sterling will remain 100,000 sterling. So that's one of the reasons why banks do get a little bit conscious of that. But yeah, being paid in euros as a whole, it isn't a major issue as long as you know what banks to go to. Now, the third question we had was, can I get a mortgage without a UK passport? We've touched on that very much before, but yes, is the answer. So again, with the Euro rules, I think I've sort of touched on that in a fair bit of detail there, so I don't need to go back over that. But again, the main thing is valid visa or settled status in the UK is really the key thing. And again, if it's a non-EU passport, well, actually, that's the same path we sort of trod before. So yeah, again, sort of valid visa really being the key one there. And last question we had on this topic was, can a non-UK resident get a mortgage in the UK? Yes, they can. So I touched on it before, that's more about sort of being in the UK. If you're not in the UK, some people are surprised then you can get a mortgage if you're not in the UK and don't have a UK passport. There are international banks that deal with that. A few of the major high street banks have international lending arms, and there's a few specialist international lenders. I've already touched on private banks playing this area as well if you're a high net worth individual. So quite a lot of options for non-UK people buying who aren't in the UK. Now, that would primarily be for investment, but if it is for, we see commonly as well, sort of children studying here or looking to settle here as well, so that's fine as well. The one that is sort of fairly commonly known as well is if you're a UK citizen but you're abroad. So that falls under the expat rules, and some high street banks entertain that, and again, certainly the international banks do as well. So a couple of things I just want to touch on if you are an expat. In fact, anyone who's just outside the UK, this applies equally, actually. What lenders look at very closely is your income and what you do for a living. So, for example, if you're employed by a big international firm, that's obviously much easier because a bank can get quite comfortable. If, for example, you're based in Google in America, that's fairly straightforward. If you're working for a very small lender, or if you're company, or if you're self-employed specifically, that can be a lot more difficult. Very few lenders, entertain people who are self-employed. Now, if it's a big company and it's audited by one of the big international audit firms, sort of the big four firms. Again, quite a few banks can get comfortable with that, but that does tend to be sort of the much bigger entities. Day to day, that's not very practical for most people, but there are a couple of banks who will still entertain self-employed people who are non-UK nationals. Expats, it's certainly easier, but the people will entertain that. So again, don't be put off. And sort of the theme sort of through this really is please speak to a broker as soon as possible. If anything here sort of think, well, actually I fit into that box, just talk to us, because we're not a bank. You know, we're here to help you, and we can tell you what bank will be best. It's so common that people go to either someone they've got a banking relationship or a friend who use them and it doesn't work for them. It is a complex area for some of the things I've touched on. So please talk to a bank, a broker. We'll help you through it and make your life as easy as possible. Okay, so last little sort of roundup then of sort of the market rates and how that's changed in the last week or so. Money market rates all up again, fairly equal actually. So 2-year swap rates gone up by 0.08% up to 1.25. 5-year money is up the same margin at 0.8 up to 1.28%. And 3-month sterling LIBOR is up 0.49% to 0.61%, and the Bank of England remains at 0.25%. So again, all money markets nudging up there. So the impact that's had on best rates, unsurprising to learn, they've nudged up also. So the best variable rates are at 0.99%. The best 2-year fixed rates from 1.3, which is up from last week. 5-year fixed rates just dipped down a touch actually, because one bank's come in to make a bit of a splash. So best 5-year money you can get is 1.41, and buy-to-let starts from 0.99%. Now, again, these are very much rates if you're a UK citizen and you've got a fairly straightforward situation, so that the lowest rates applicable. The actual rate you'll be offered will be dependent on your situation and your deposit, as I touched on. So if you're looking more in the euro sort of area, probably going to be a little bit north of that, but actually not too much depending on your situation. So that's it for this week. Look forward to catching up with you next week. Take care.